Okay, all right, now we're going to work on our center egg. So I'm going to just lock and load. I'm going to select my orange. Now this one actually has to be a gradient as well. So I'm going to start off by choosing my darker orange to the lighter yellow. And obviously it is solid. It's solid to solid. And again, on the annotator, you just want to drag it, give yourself a little bit more yellow there at the top and a little bit of orange. Okay, then I am going to do the highlight. Now for the highlight, I'm just going to draw a nice shape like that. I'm also going to add a darker area, darker shadow area here. Okay, so for the lighter one, obviously I'm going to use a gradient of my color to white. And might need to turn it around. And if you want to, you can take down the opacity. So there's just this nice little sliver there. I'm just going to move it down a little bit. And maybe rotate it ever so slightly. All right. And I'm going to give it a little bit of a blur. Just so that it's a little bit softer. The bottom one I'm going to do something similar, but I'm going to do it just from this kind of like darker the darker orange, and I'm going to just bring it to the front, make sure that's to the front. I'm also going to make it multiply. And I'm going to just add a blur. So that kind of just gives me a really nice soft edge there. Okay, the bacon bits will come in a little bit later, so that's just going to give it some really cool effects. Okay, we're going to bring the bread back. Next, what we're going to do is I am going to create the lettuce leaves or guacamole. I'm still not 100% sure what that is, but anyway, so I'm just gonna, it's probably guacamole, I can't spell it. This is just weird. Guac. Graph. Okay, whatever. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my pen tool, and I am just going to draw these shapes. All other layers are locked. Again, you can always smooth it out later. So I'm just gonna draw a few there, and then there's a little bitsy bopsy. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just select all of them. I am going to fill it with that solid green. Okay, now before we get to start, I'm going to add some shadows here as well. So I'm just going to drag one, bring one to the top, copy and paste to the front, and select two of them and minus front. All right, and then this one, this little sliver, we can actually now go and make multiply and take our opacity down to about 30. So that's just going to give me a nice little shadow, and again, I can do a blur on that. So it just softens it. Going to do exactly the same with the rest. So always remember you want to drag it ever so slightly. If it jumps weirdly, then just double check on your view that your snap to pixel is off, because otherwise you sometimes can't drag it. So I'm gonna copy one, paste it to the front. So that is Control Command C and then F, and then select two. Just make sure again you select the right one to the front. And second option, and you have a little sliver, same story. I'm going to just fill it with a darker color. I'm going to go into transparency, multiply, take down the opacity to 50 and put a blur on, and that's what you're going to get. Okay, so it just makes it a little bit cooler, and it gives us dimension. Same story here. I'll drag it ever so slightly. Control C, Control F. On the Y mode, I'm going to select two. Now you know the drill. Oh, sorry. Right one must always be in the front, otherwise it doesn't work. I've got my sliver. Go to my transparency palette. Go to multiply. Take down and 50 and Y, and that's it. And Gaussian blur. Oh, this color is weird. Sorry, that was a sneeze. Terribly sorry about that. Okay, I'll try to fix it later. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Next, we're going to do the little bacon bits. So I'm just going to lock and load, new layer. I'm just going to call it bacon. And again, what you want to do here is you can either draw with a pencil, or you can do with a blob, or you can actually do it with the actual paintbrush. Oh dear. Okay, before you draw with a paintbrush, just remember that you want to fill new brush strokes. Okay, so that's quite important. It actually read the bacon. Believe that, read the bacon. All right, so I'm going to choose my right color, and on the Y mode, I'm just going to, I know there's one sitting there. Oh, it wants to fill it now with some bizarre thing. Okay, I'm just going to throw that away. Make a new layer. There you go. And Shift X. No stroke. Okay, next. I know there's just a few of them, so now here, if you want it to be not smooth, then obviously you're going to double click and you are going to take it down to accurate. Okay, so this is going to make it not as smooth, but it's going to make it a lot more accurate. Okay, so I'm just going to draw quite a few. Sometimes you actually can just draw a little spot there. There's one there, a little bit here. So you can just have some fun. Make it as real as you can. Okay. All right. So there is all our bacon bits now. All right. So what we want to do next is we want to select all of them, and then what we want to do is I'm going to group that. I'm going to group them. I'm going to just take down all the strokes. And then what we want to do is we also just want to alt drag it. And this time I'm just going to fill that with the gray color. And just going to go into my layers palette. I'm just going to move it below, and then I am going to make them multiply. So that will just give us a little bit of a natural shadow. All right. I want to add some gray now on my egg. All right, so I'm going to go back to my yellow egg. All right, I am going to select it. I am going to copy it, paste it to the front. All right, and completely to the front. And then this time, again, I am going to just choose a normal gradient. Oopsie, sorry, don't want to do that. Just a normal gradient, black again to nothing. So it has to go to white, but white is opacity of nothing. All right, and just your black must be solid. Okay, then we're going to go G annotator, just go and make it nice and solid, and just turn it a little bit so you're happy. You can obviously also play around with it being radial if you want to, but I think in this case I'll stay with my I'll stay with it being linear. I think it's fine. Just going to drag that down again. All right, so we're going to go back into effects, we're going to go back into texture, we're going to go back into grain, and again, we want to just increase, play around with our intensity, play around with our contrast, so we kind of like get something that we're really, really happy with. All right, when you're happy, just say okay. And then again, in the appearance palette, we are going to go, just click on and off. In the appearance palette, we are going to go for the opacity. We're going to take it down to 20. And there is a lovely grain for our egg. All right, and I'm just going to say save. Right, okay. Next. I'm going to add a little bit of texture and some highlights on my guacamole, and I'm going to do exactly the same as what I did before. It's going to lock and load. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to call this highlights. And just going to bring it down to the guacamole, above the guacamole. And on the Y mode, again, I'm going to take my brush and just kind of increase it. I'm going to start with the light gray that I want, the light green that I want to use. I can probably also cheat it a little bit. And I'm just going to add some areas. And again, you can kind of play around with where you see lighter areas. Again, the beautiful thing of Illustrator is that if I now go, oh, just missed one there at the top. So if I now go and I select my my highlights, I can do exactly the same. I can go and just play around with the actual color. Sorry. With the color, or I can go and play around with the actual opacity. So I'm going to take the opacity down. So I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter. And I'm also going to maybe 50. I'm also going to add a little bit of blur. So I'm going to go back into my effects. I'm going to go to blur. I'm going to go to Gaussian blur, and that's just going to soften it. So it's just going to give me a little bit more of realism in that shape. Then we're going to go back to our main guacamole. I'm going to select it again. I'm going to see and F it again, bring it to the front entirely. And this time again, I'm going to choose a solid gradient. On the gradient annotator, we just want to turn it. And I want to go to effects. I want to go to style, texture. I want to go grain. I'm going to play a little bit with intensity now because I don't really want it to be that crazy. It's just a little bit there. Okay, and then we are going to again go to our appearance palette, and again just always click on and off. On the appearance palette, I am going to make this multiply, and I'm going to change it down to 20 or maybe even 30. Okay, and that shape you can now, or that trick you can now go and do to the rest. All right. If we're not happy with our squiggly bits for our highlights, of course we can amend them. See, now that we have a little bit of a gradient there, we can actually just play a little bit more with them so they actually fit a little bit better in the space. Okay, same story for the rest. I think that looks quite great. I think that looks fine. I think we need to work a little bit more on our highlights, but I think that's coming together very nicely. I think it's coming together very nicely. Okay, so I'm going to, again, just copy this guacamole bit, bring it to the front, add a solid to nothing gradient. I'm just going to rotate it slightly. Filter, grain, happy. And same story, V, click on and off. We're going to make that multiply, and we're going to take down the opacity. So it's just ever so slightly, it's just there. It just give me a little bit of texture there. And then the last one here as well. gradient annotator, turn it the way you need it to be. All right, make sure that you've got enough effect. Go to grain, play with your intensity. This is a very small part, so we probably need to just V on and off, go to transparency, go to multiply, go to 30, and we've got a little bit of a nice grain going on there. I think it's coming together quite nicely. Again, what we can do is we can, as I say, we can play around with our highlights. This is our bacon bits. We can play a little bit with our egg whites highlights. Again, if we just select them, we can give them a little bit of gradient, so they just look a little bit more natural. So they don't look just kind of like stuck on. Again, as I say, once you've applied the gradient, it is there. So you can, yeah, you can just design. Am I going to try? A little bit. Or maybe not. Maybe we're just going to go linear for now. That's a little bit. Yeah, so you just want to create some areas which looks like, you know, the folds of what you would see on an egg. That's really the purpose of this. And as I say, what is nice is you can actually just move your annotator and then pull your gradient, so you kind of like just have a little bit of a shape here and there. I think it's coming together quite nicely. But this, in a nutshell, is actually, I mean, that's our real one. In a nutshell, is a very quick way of actually drawing something that you can actually now use as an icon. Okay, so last things, we are going to add some shadows. So I'm just going to create a new layer. I'm just going to call them shadows. This is going to be actually below the bread, but still on the plate for this one. Again, I'm just going to roughly quickly go and draw a shape. I'm going to color pick that color. I know that this color is actually quite dark. That was the color that was that we picked on. So G, move your gradient into place. And again, your stop is going to be 0 opacity. Okay, so you want a 0 opacity for your last white stop. Okay, all right, happy with that. Happy with that. Going to again, going to copy this, going to paste it to the front. Now we need a solid again to add, to get our gradient. To get our texture. So I'm going to go to effects, I'm going to go to texture, I'm going to go to grain. There it is. Again, I'm just going to see where, quite like a nice solid for this one. Say okay. Same story. Go to go to your appearance palette. On the opacity, we are going to make it 30. And that's beautiful. So both of these I'm going to select through the layers palette. I'm just going to click on the layer. I'm going to go back to my effects. I'm going to go back into a blur. I'm going to go to Gaussian blur. And again, I'm just going to give it a Gaussian blur. That's going to blur my gradient as well, but I actually quite like it. The next thing that we want to do, I'm going to save it, is I'm going to just do the shadow on the plate. So I'm going to create a, I'm going to do it on the plate layer actually. Again, I'm just going to draw really nice and big. Again, I'm going to choose that really dark color, G. I'm just going to rotate this one ever so slightly because it's just, it's nearly there. All right. I'm just going to double check the stop because this stop is actually that kind of creamy color. So I'm just going to double check that. To 0, obviously. Okay. And then I'm just sending it to the back. Okay. Now I'm going to copy and paste to the front. Again, same story, changing it to solid black. And go to effects, go to grain. Say okay. All right. Now the nice thing about the gradient annotator is that you can still change the grain. All right, because it is still a gradient, so you can actually just move it if you're not happy with it. So on my transparency palette, I'm going to go to 30. And fantastic. Now this time I'm going to select just the shape, and I'm going to add, not the grain, I'm going to just add a blur on that shape. All right, not on the grain. I'm just going to make it really nice and big. And then put the grain back on. All right, so then you have a really nice soft shadow, and yeah, and there's our little illustration. I hope you enjoyed it. I think it came out quite cool. We need some more time to add some more details, but I think it looks okay. Looks okay. I hope you enjoyed it, and that is it for me for another Illustrator tutorial. All right, see you soon. Thank you. Bye.